Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that's literally wiring our future, but we kind of take it for granted. Copper. Yup. From the AI revolution that's changing everything to the electric car you might be thinking of buying, copper is absolutely essential. And right now, well, it's heading for a huge problem.
So let me just start with this because it really says it all. Amazon, the cloud computing and online shopping giant, is now going out and buying copper directly from a mine. Now that is not normal. So what did they see coming that the rest of us are just starting to wake up to? All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at this looming copper deficit. Then we'll dive into who suddenly wants all this metal. After that, we'll tackle the massive supply challenges, check out how analysts are viewing the key players, and finally ask if we can actually innovate our way out of this whole mess. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, the core issue. And I gotta stress, this isn't just some temporary blip in the market. What experts are seeing is a deep, structural problem that's been building for years. And wow, this chart from the International Energy Agency, it really paints a stark picture. See that massive gap opening up? That's the difference between the copper we think we'll have and the copper we actually need for the green energy transition. By 2035, we could be short by a staggering 1/3. That is a huge deficit. And in case you're thinking, 2035 is pretty far off, well, take a look at this. This analysis from Bernstein shows the problem is basically knocking on our door. They see the market tipping into a deficit as early as 2027, and from there, that shortfall just gets deeper and deeper. This isn't some far-off future problem. This is happening now. So the main takeaway here is pretty clear. We are staring down the barrel of a structural shortfall of millions and millions of tons of copper. That is an enormous gap to fill. But what in the world is causing this crazy demand? Let's dig into that next. For the longest time, copper demand was pretty predictable. It was all tied to things like building houses and general construction. But now, a whole new set of power-hungry technologies are completely rewriting the rules of the game. So this is the traditional picture, right? Building construction, electronics, infrastructure, they've always been the biggest users of copper. It's the steady, foundational stuff we're all used to. But this entire pie chart is being rapidly, and I mean rapidly, redrawn. And this is why. These four sectors, they are the new titans of copper demand. You've got AI data centers popping up everywhere, the huge global shift to EVs, the urgent need to upgrade our aging electrical grids, and a big surge in defense spending. All of this is creating a demand curve like nothing we have ever seen before. Just to put a number on it, think about this. A single electric vehicle needs up to 4 times more copper than a regular gas-powered car. 4 times! So every single EV that rolls off the assembly line represents a massive step up in how much copper we're consuming. And then there's AI. All those data centers that power artificial intelligence, they need an incredible amount of copper for power and for cooling. Analysts are now projecting the demand from AI plus defense is set to nearly triple by 2040. That's millions of tons of new demand that simply isn't optional. Okay, so if demand is exploding, the simple answer is to just go out and mine more copper, right? Well, if only it were that easy. The truth is, the supply side is facing some deep, long-term challenges that make a quick fix pretty much impossible. This number, it's just mind-boggling. From the moment you find a promising copper deposit, it takes on average nearly 18 years to actually get that mine producing metal. 18 years! That's for exploration, getting permits, raising the money, and then all the construction. You just can't flip a switch and get more copper. This slide really just captures the core tension of this whole story. It's a tale of two speeds. On one side, you have this incredibly slow, difficult process for bringing on new supply. And on the other, you've got this lightning-fast, exponential demand growth from new tech. It is a fundamental mismatch, like a turtle trying to race a rocket ship. And just to make things even more complicated, a huge chunk of the world's copper is located in geopolitically tricky places. Analysts put countries into tiers. Tier 1 nations like the US and Canada are stable, but they just don't have enough. A lot of the supply has to come from Tier 2 and 3 countries, where the risk of political instability or strikes can disrupt everything at a moment's notice. So, with this intense squeeze playing out, how are investors and analysts looking at the companies that are actually, digging the copper out of the ground? Let's take a quick, neutral look at how one research report is sizing up a few of the key players. So this analyst report breaks it down into 3 pretty different strategies.
First, you have a company like Capstone Copper, which is seen as a pure growth story. Their production is surging as new projects come online. Then there's a name like Barrick Gold, which is called a hidden copper giant because it's mostly valued as a gold company. And finally, you have Teck Resources, which is framed as a premium, safe jurisdiction play. But as you can see, each one comes with its own unique set of risks.
Okay, so with this clear gap between supply and demand and these crazy long lead times for new mines, the world is desperate for solutions. So this brings us to our final question. Can technology and new ways of thinking actually help us innovate our way out of this crisis? This quote from Rio Tinto's copper chief executive perfectly captures the new mindset. And it's talking about that partnership with Amazon that we mentioned right at the start. It's all about combining old-school industrial know-how with modern high-tech to find totally new ways of getting the materials we need. And at the heart of this whole thing is a technology called bioleaching. Now, instead of the traditional brute force way of smelting and refining, this process uses microbes, living organisms, to gently and efficiently pull the copper atoms out of the ore. And what's revolutionary is that it can even work on low-grade material that used to be considered just waste rock.
The potential benefits of this tech, which Rio Tinto calls Newton, are just massive. The goal is to produce super pure copper right at the mine site, so you don't even need a smelter. It's designed to use way less water and create lower carbon emissions. And maybe most important of all, it can literally turn old waste piles into a brand new source of supply. It tackles both the supply crunch and sustainability.
And that leaves us with the big multi-trillion-dollar question. We've got this undeniable demand surge from EVs and AI, and it's colliding with a slow, fragile supply chain. Innovative technologies like bioleaching offer a ton of hope, but scaling them up takes time. So will these breakthroughs and these new kinds of partnerships be enough to wire the future we're all trying to build? And as a final note, please remember that this explainer is just for informational purposes. It is not financial advice. So please be sure to do your own due diligence. Thanks so much for tuning in.